This is the big one. GB News can confirm that Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor has relocated to a property on the Sandringham estate belonging to His Majesty the King.
Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor is allegedly struggling to secure even bare-bones staff at his new temporary home on the Sandringham estate, following his removal from Royal Lodge and years of fallout, scandal and widely reported behaviour towards staff that many have described as humiliating. This video covers Andrew's forced departure from Royal Lodge, his relocation to Sandringham, and why news reporting now suggests that people simply do not want to work for him anymore. February 2nd, 2026 marked a shift that had been building quietly for years. On that Monday, Andrew left Royal Lodge, the 30-room house in Windsor Great Park that had been his home since 2003, a departure later confirmed by Reuters.
Well, Patrick, as you saw first reported in The Sun, Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor has now relocated from Royal Lodge near Windsor Castle and has moved to a property on the Sandringham estate, as you said.
Coverage immediately focused on the manner of the exit, because according to a friend quoted by The Sun and repeated by Reuters, the move happened late at night and was described as so humiliating that it took place under the cover of darkness. That single detail shaped the tone of everything that followed. Royal Lodge was never just a residence. It had become a symbol of Andrew's refusal to accept how far his position had fallen. The house sat inside Windsor Great Park, carried prestige, and came with a lease arrangement that had already drawn scrutiny at the highest levels. Parliamentary correspondence, published by the House of Commons Public Accounts Committee, confirmed that Andrew held a 75-year lease starting in August 2003, with reported figures including a £1 million premium and £7.5 million spent on repairs at 2002 prices.
Belonging to His Majesty the King. Now, this isn't going to be his permanent home, but this is basically a pit stop, as it were, before he moves into the widely reported Marsh Farm.
Even more telling was the question Parliament raised about compensation, using an example of roughly £560,000 if the lease were terminated in August 2026, which meant Andrew's housing situation had already become a matter of public accountability rather than private privilege. That scrutiny followed him out the door. Once Royal Lodge was gone, the focus shifted to where Andrew landed next, and that change alone spoke volumes. Reuters confirmed that he relocated to a cottage on the King's Sandringham estate in Norfolk, and People reported that his temporary base is Wood Farm. Wood Farm carries a very different meaning within royal life. It is best known as the home Prince Philip used after retiring from public duties, a place associated with withdrawal rather than holding on. The contrast between a 30-room Windsor mansion and a modest Sandringham cottage was impossible to ignore. Within days of the move becoming public, reports surfaced that Andrew was having difficulty securing staff at Sandringham.
So, of course, we knew Buckingham Palace announced in October 2025 that Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor would be moving out of Royal Lodge. He would forfeit that lease where he was paying peppercorn rent.
People reported that a long list of staff had allegedly refused to serve him, citing sources traced back to The Sun. Marie Claire echoed the same claims, reporting that staff had been told they did not have to work for Andrew if they felt uncomfortable, and that many had already opted out. The language used was telling, because this was not framed as a shortage of workers, but as reluctance tied directly to Andrew himself. The phrase that stuck was bare-bone staffing. Marie Claire described Andrew as being left with a skeleton crew, and repeated a remark suggesting that for the first time in his life, he might have to open the front door himself. That image resonated, because it captured how complete the reversal had become. A man raised inside palaces, surrounded by staff from birth, was now allegedly struggling to find people willing to work for him at all. At the same time, news reporting pointed to increased security measures around Andrew's new Sandringham residence, adding another layer to the picture. According to those reports, access to the cottage has been more tightly controlled than might normally be expected for a temporary and relatively low-profile arrangement.
Royal staff are refusing to work for Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor following his move to Sandringham. There are new allegations about the sordid and degrading acts the King's brother and his billionaire criminal friend wanted to carry out,
with heightened attention to privacy and movement around the property. While the palace has not outlined any specific protocols publicly, the reporting suggests that Andrew's notoriety, combined with staff unease and sustained public interest, has required a more cautious approach to security, even on an estate long accustomed to royal protection. Alongside those reports, allegations in tabloid and royal news coverage described Andrew's reaction when he first saw the Sandringham property as openly negative. According to those claims, he was unhappy with the size and condition of the cottage and allegedly reacted angrily when it became clear this would be his immediate home after Royal Lodge. No official confirmation exists, and these accounts remain allegations, but they echo long-standing descriptions from royal biographers who have portrayed Andrew as struggling to accept any reduction in status. Placed next to reports of staffing refusals and tighter security, those claims reinforce the impression of someone still grappling with how sharply his circumstances had changed. To understand why this matters so much, it helps to look back at Andrew's long-documented reputation with staff, a reputation that did not emerge overnight.
Former Duke's denials failing to stop his expedited eviction from Royal Lodge. Staff at his temporary Sandringham home told they can refuse to work for Andrew if they feel uncomfortable.
For years, royal reporters and biographers have described him as difficult and demanding behind the scenes, with accounts of dismissive behaviour and a tendency to humiliate those working for him. Those descriptions circulated well before the Epstein scandal and were often framed as part of a broader pattern rather than isolated incidents. One of the most consistent voices on this has been royal biographer Andrew Loney, who has spent years compiling accounts from people who worked around Andrew in royal households. In interviews and published research, Loney has described claims that Andrew regularly spoke sharply to staff, reacted badly when expectations were not met, and fostered an atmosphere where people felt on edge rather than supported. These were not one-off anecdotes, but recurring themes reported by multiple sources over time, which meant his reputation inside palace walls was already fragile long before he arrived at Sandringham. The Epstein fallout intensified everything. In November 2019, Andrew stepped back from public duties following intense backlash over his associations with Jeffrey Epstein, announcing that he would withdraw for the foreseeable future. That withdrawal never ended. In 2022, he reached a financial settlement with Virginia Giuffre in a civil case in the United States, a settlement he has said did not involve an admission of wrongdoing. Reuters referenced that settlement when reporting on his exit from Royal Lodge, placing the move firmly within the context of unresolved controversy. By late 2025, his position inside the monarchy weakened further. People reported that King Charles stripped Andrew of his remaining titles and honours, formalising what had already become clear. Andrew was no longer a working royal, and the institutional protection that once insulated him had thinned dramatically. That shift mattered internally, because it changed how staff viewed their obligations. According to Marie Claire and People, staff were explicitly told they did not have to serve Andrew if they felt uncomfortable. That instruction was highly unusual. Royal staff are accustomed to assignments being non-negotiable, handled quietly and without discussion, which meant the introduction of choice signalled that resistance was anticipated. Once that choice existed, many reportedly took it. Sandringham itself adds another layer. It is a working estate with long-serving staff, many of whom have built careers on discretion and professionalism. Being assigned to Andrew now carries reputational weight beyond the estate gates.
That Andrew wasn't benefiting the public goods because he wasn't paying any rent on it. In fact, he was paying peppercorn rent. And of course, on top of that, he was being accused by Virginia Giuffre, for example, the 17-year-old, or at the time was 17, accused Andrew of having sex with her when she was.
For people watching years of headlines unfold, the association alone may feel like a risk they no longer need to take. What makes this moment stand out is the scale of Andrew's fall from grace inside royal life, because it is no longer abstract. For decades, he lived surrounded by full household staff, people assigned to manage daily life from morning to night, ensuring even minor tasks never crossed his path. Royal Lodge ran on routine and hierarchy, where meals appeared, doors opened, and problems were handled quietly. Now, according to reporting, that structure has largely disappeared, leaving him with minimal assistance at best. News coverage has highlighted how unfamiliar this reality would be for someone raised inside royal privilege. Reports suggest that without a reliable household team, Andrew may now have to manage tasks he once delegated automatically, from coordinating daily schedules to dealing with practical household needs. Even the repeated line about opening his own front door matters, not because of the action itself, but because it symbolizes a life built on service narrowing to one where service is no longer guaranteed. This change underlines how isolated his position has become within the institution. Royal households rely on cooperation and trust, and when that trust erodes, the practical consequences arrive quickly. The reported staffing difficulties at Sandringham suggest that Andrew's fall has reached the most personal level, where even behind palace gates, accommodation no longer comes with automatic support. Status, in this case, has proven more fragile than the buildings that once symbolized it. Alongside these developments, royal coverage has increasingly focused on Andrew's mental and emotional state since the move. News reporting has described him as isolated, angry, and deeply resentful of how his circumstances have changed, with sources suggesting he feels betrayed by the institution he believes he served. The combination of losing Royal Lodge, struggling to secure staff, and living under heightened security has reportedly taken a toll. That isolation is also reported to extend into his family relationships. Coverage has suggested that while Andrew remains close to his daughters in theory, the strain of recent years has complicated those bonds, particularly with Princess Eugenie.
Andrew, since then, we have seen, haven't we, Patrick, in the last couple of days, that photograph of Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor on all fours, and then his brother, Prince Edward, only 6-7 hours ago, was essentially kind of ambushed by a journalist and asked how he felt about the latest tranche of Epstein files, and says our thoughts are with the victims, perhaps showing the contrast between working members of the royal family.
Reports describe tension rooted in reputational damage, public scrutiny, and disagreement over how Andrew has handled his downfall. While specifics remain private, the broader picture painted by royal reporting is of a man whose personal relationships have narrowed alongside his public role. Tabloid reporting escalated the situation by using the word strike, a claim that remains unverified and unconfirmed by any official source. Still, the story gained traction because it aligned with a narrative that has been building for decades, one where Andrew's behaviour towards staff has carried consequences. What nobody expected was how public all of this would become. Staffing arrangements inside royal households are normally invisible, absorbed quietly by the institution. In this case, the absence of staff became the story, exposing how isolated Andrew now appears even within royal estates. At Royal Lodge, Andrew lived inside a structure designed to absorb controversy. Layers of staff, protocol, and hierarchy created distance between his behaviour and daily consequences. At Wood Farm, that buffer appears to be gone. Reports suggest he is now facing a version of royal life where support is limited and loyalty is no longer automatic. Silence from Buckingham Palace has allowed the narrative to settle. Reuters confirmed the move. People confirmed the location. Multiple outlets repeated the staffing claims with similar language. No public denial followed, and in royal reporting, silence often functions as acceptance. By early February 2026, the picture had sharpened. Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor had been forced out of Royal Lodge, relocated to Sandringham, and almost immediately became the subject of reports that staff did not want to work for him. Whether described as refusal, reluctance, or bare-bones staffing, the outcome looked the same. Royal life depends on discretion and loyalty, and when those quietly fall away, the consequences surface quickly. Andrew's move to Sandringham was meant to be quieter and contained. Instead, it has highlighted how far his standing has fallen. When staffing becomes a struggle, status stops offering protection, and years of reported behaviour begin to matter in the most basic parts of daily life. For royal watchers, this moment removes the last layer of illusion. And when even within the gates of Sandringham, people are reportedly saying no thanks, it tells a story no official statement ever could. So let me know what you think. Do you think Andrew deserves what's been handed to him? Is it enough? If you enjoyed the video, be sure to subscribe, as there is plenty more on the way.